Everyone, I call the Prescott Planning Commission to order. It's Monday, August 1st, 6 o'clock. Roll call, John?
Here.
Rick?
Here.
Dave?
Here.
Josh?
Here.
Steve?
Here.
All right. Look for a motion to approve the minutes for July 5th.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the minutes for July 5th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the first item on the agenda is to election of a planning commission vice chairperson in case of my absence. I have a suggestion to make it John, being that he is part of the city council, if John's willing to do that. If anybody else has any other suggestions, I'm open to that.
John did a great job last time.
Make a motion.
Oh, thank you.
Make a motion as John is the vice chair.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Great Rivers Third Edition Concept Plan, Alternative Routes Discussions. You want to start with that, Matt?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Planning Commission members. Just a brief overview. We did discuss this in May, but I know we have a couple new members, although I'm sure one of them has well-versed in what we're about to discuss. So the Most Family Partnership has developed the first and second editions of Great Rivers. They approached the city back in April with a concept plan that would add another, actually 48 lots, not 49 lots, I believe, to the development. The current Prescott Comprehensive Plan of Chapter 6 does call for planning of an arterial route north and south from State Highway 29 to US Highway 10, all the way down then to State Highway 35. Plan Commission reviewed this on May 2nd meeting, and it was asked that we put together some cost estimates for how much these, the three options that we proposed. So again, why we're having these discussions now is this concept plan that was brought before from the Most Family Partnership does begin to look at that area where a potential bypass would be needed to be planned. So as they came forward, we have started these discussions and are asking for feedback from Planning Commission on what we'd like to do moving forward. One of the issues also is being brought up is currently there is no funding for some of the things. Obviously, we can discuss that. The hardest part of this whole discussion is that we have no idea exactly when this will happen. But that, again, is why we are planning for it. So if it happens in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we do have the proper setup for what we believe is in the best for the city of Prescott. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg Adams, who is our city engineer. He put together the cost estimates that are before you tonight, and he can talk you through the layouts and the maps and the cost estimates that he has.
So the city had asked me to revise some of the costs of this. This was something going back to about 2003, I believe, right, Matt? This original discussion. And what I had done for the city's request to look at this, what would these cost potentially, was at that time there was a discussion of a 4-lane road. I had pulled together just using aerial mapping and as an estimate of that. But the big limitation is getting across that ravine. So as part of that, we did actually create a profile across there to just show the span, and it is approximately 1,000 feet to span that ravine. Another option would be to try to excavate down on the north side extensively, not knowing there's probably rock, those costs and whatnot, but I kept that bridge span the same for both scenarios. So it's very expensive, and there's not a lot of DOT comparables for a 1,000-foot bridge. Plus, with the height of that bridge, it would be very high at almost 100 feet high above the bottom of the ravine. So there's not a lot of comparable bridge pricing to that. I took 2 to 3 span bridges on those square foot prices, and I increased those quite a bit to get what I felt was a fairly robust cost. But if you look at the bridge and abutments, totals are over $10 million just for that part of the project. The other things that are included there are the road construction. This doesn't include any water utilities. Those are potentially that's a kind of another discussion. It's mainly for the corridor. I guess if there was any questions on the 4-lane bypass road, I could take any questions if anybody had anything.
I've got a quick question.
Sure.
So as you mapped the elevation that you spoke of there, did you take into consideration the entire ravine in regards to placement? I was curious what led to that placement in the valley.
This has been the kind of the general location for quite a long time, because even in, I think prior to or after or 2003 or so, this is probably the, when you look at the ravine and all the other topography, there's so many other valleys and vertically challenging areas that it is about the most conducive place. It's where this original alignment was slated back, almost 20 years ago now. And I think a lot of that was because of it is the one that goes the most north-south, doesn't have any other crossings. You could see if it was slid to the west, there'd be similar width of the main ravine, but you'd have other valleys that you'd have to be trying to cross there too, that continue on the west side of this area too. If you went to the east of this, you can kind of see how the bottom of that valley opens up in a couple of different directions. So it is about the best available location right now for that. And and it was following the original plan's rough location, the original comp plan. I don't know if you wanted to look at the 2-lane.
Just hit
Hit the up arrow or
Down.
Down arrow. And this is still, so this is the 2-lane.
Yep.
Okay, so this would be more representative of a 2-lane street. I guess going back to the 4-lane discussion before I would leave that was talked about in the 2003 comp plan. Looking at that, I don't really see anything that would drive that traffic count to where you would need a 4-lane road necessarily. You'd be approaching, like, say, a Highway 10 traffic counts of over 10,000 cars a day or something on that line to really drive the need for something like that. So a 2-lane option was looked at. The bridge costs on that got a little bit less because it wasn't quite as wide. It's still the same length, though. And, of course, the pavement costs, street costs are less, so it's about $11 million for that. And like I said, on the bridge pricing, I'd even contacted some bridge contractors, and they really didn't want to give me any estimated pricing. They just felt that they needed to have more of a study looked at or more evaluation done. They just said they just could not pull an estimate like that from just simply my request or an alignment pulled across for that. It really is a bit of a wild card, though, what a bridge like that would cost. There's probably only a handful in the state. There might be a couple of interstate bridges that might approach that 1,000 feet, but it would be a little bit of an unknown in terms of a tangible cost on that. So, but I was using DOT pricing and putting quite large inflationary things on that for the height of that bridge. to come up with that number.
I have another quick question.
Sure.
When you were looking at comps and you were comparing, I mean, you know, I think about communities around us that have bridges, like River Falls has 2 or 3, 2 for sure, probably 3. What bridges were you looking at for comps? Any in
Well, I'm
particular?
looking at more like current bridges that are being built now, because if I go back 10 or 15 years of what a bridge cost, it's so out of date with the pricing. I was
Sure.
looking at current bridges, like say built in 2021, and they use a lot of them on like a per square foot price, but I'm trying to find bridges of similar span magnitude. There's not a lot of those, so I was increasing that per square foot cost quite a bit.
Sure.
To get that. Pricing has increased substantially on projects, even in the last 2 years. Pricing has really gone up, so.
Sure. As a bridge that's 1,000 feet long and 100 feet high, is there one that's comparable? I'm trying to picture what that even looks like. It's hard to quantify. It's big.
I think I'm trying to think, you know, I would have to done some type of
Gotta know
inventory
maybe.
of bridges, you know, to look for that type
Yeah.
of dimension, but I think there's one, you know, near Madison, as you head out of Madison, I think there's one, I don't think it's off 100 feet high though, but there is one that's approaching that
Yeah.
length, yeah.
I've got another question. With these numbers that you've got put together here, knowing that pretty much every project I've ever taken on always takes longer and costs more, are these numbers, would you say, on the high side, it was supposed to be spot on as best we could figure, or maybe low considering inflation is just through the roof, or what are your thoughts on the numbers?
The bridge is the big one, like as I've been reiterating, you know, if a lot of this would depend on when is it gonna be built. These would be like today's numbers, anything you're gonna do if this is out 5, 10, 15 years, it's gonna be greatly increased with inflationary adjustments for that push. So it's hard to say. Yeah, I've done many projects here in town, and those street projects are much more quantifiable, very predictable. I feel pretty comfortable with those. This is a tough one. It's in terms of that nature of this bridge. It's really hard to say. I think I was just talking with Matt. You know, we've gone through a real compression and expansion period in economy, especially for construction. When we went into COVID, we had bid Lake Street. It was right when everything was getting shut down. Those bids came in so competitive. They were quite a bit under my estimate. And now I'm seeing from, you know, the end of 2021 to now, especially started right around May, where material prices have gone up 30% and labor is now starting to trend up. And both those add into construction costs. Fuel is through the roof. So it's really hard to project those out. I'm hoping the economy will kind of plane out and get into some predictability where we can move for these projections with a little more consistency, but it's not there right now. So
It's really hard to predict what's going to happen. Let's say this happened in 15 years. You know, who knows what it could be? I mean, who knows? Maybe the state would all of a sudden have grants for things like that. Of course, they don't now, but there's always those possibilities.
Yeah.
But you can almost guarantee if it happened in 15 years from now, that'd be significantly higher price.
yeah, even in a
Probably.
normal economy, I think you'd see that 8, 9, 10% per year increase, 8% at least on a
I mean, it does give you a
per
ballpark,
year.
Today,
you know, of
Yeah.
what it'd be today.
Yeah.
maybe, like you said, it's kind of a guess.
Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I'd have one more directed towards the city. Maybe Matt could speak to
Yeah,
it a
go
little
ahead.
bit. just the, these numbers are hard for me to quantify. Obviously, I'm not super familiar with the city's cash flow and how, what 10 million, $15 million is to the city. Could you speak to that at all in regards to like what a project like this would be to the city if they had to take it on today or tomorrow or 10 years or 15 years? Is this like a crippling task or is this like a drop in the bucket?
So
Obviously
I guess
not,
I
but,
could,
Not a drop of the bucket.
No, I know, but I mean like
yeah.
on what's end of the scale, where's that at? For
Sure. I think, in trying to quantify how the city would pay for this if they took on the whole project themselves, just looking at, say, option number 2, where it's more of a local connector road, and we're just looking at trying to fund a bridge. Obviously, not obviously, but if we were to take that on right now, it would be something that we'd have to substantially increase our debt service to cover. And obviously, that would either take us making substantial cuts, trying to come up with raised revenue through a lot of new construction that we'd have to save up for, or raising taxes to make that work. Now, if we paid through a bond, if we were to get grant funding in terms of maybe like a third, if we were to look at special assessments for a third, I think the main thing to keep in mind is if the city's taking on this, where none of that is happening until the northern area where the landowners currently would go forward with development. If they move forward with development, then obviously we're looking at much more larger development that if we were to do some of it as a special assessment, that's something that we could consider as well. Looking at 15 years though, obviously our debt picture is a lot different in terms of what we have for debt. This all depends too on who's on council and what the current, belief system is in terms of how to pay for things are on council at that time. So it's hard to say, how it would be paid for. But today, if it was to happen like right now, and we said we have to come up with $11 million to pay for it, yeah, it'd be very, very difficult without looking at grant opportunities to help pay for it.
What's the city's annual budget?
I don't have that
2.2, something like that?
for just general. Just general fund, or yeah,
3 mil.
I think it's around 3 million.
Yeah.
So,
Helps give you an idea.
and I guess my thought is, developers put in roads, we don't put them in for them unless we special assess them. And part of the demand that a development would put on the city should be paid for by the developer. We have impact fees for water and sewer now. Again, I work for a municipality and I'm sure we could research others, but in this case, they would say, no, you're gonna put in a turn lane, you're gonna give us a certain amount of money. The developer doesn't have to put that whole bridge in because it's not just them that'll use it. So my thought is, I talked to Matt earlier today about, some people say, well, it's not on the DOT's plan. Well, the DOT won't put it on their plan until we kind of put it on our plan somewhat and petition to have them put it on there. But we, the developer should pay a portion. It's not, the most shouldn't pay for it all. If the Eichmanns or the Righties eventually develop, they're gonna use it. Then me as a resident of the city, I can see myself using it now and then. So what percentage does a developer pay? And that's maybe where we say, we got a Cedar Corp right now as our engineer. Say, hey, I think there's a way out there, because again, city I work for, they charge a capital cost. So much per lot for this development. Now, does it pay for the whole road? No, but it's a percentage. And maybe that's what we do is figure out how to pay, assess each lot a percentage, not all of it, because some of it will be tax dollars, and go that route. Say, well, okay, you don't put this road in as we're talking. Again, that bridge is daunting. I'm one of those, that's a lot of money, but we still need something to go north and south, and it's not going 4 miles that way to say we're gonna go to the high school or the tax. We're gonna go through town, and we know how clustered up it gets down on the main street anyway. So I think we need something. But as I think Steve and I talked a little bit, if we had to move this a quarter or a half mile east, I was just checking on the phone, but there again, we'd have to get that person just to the east and say, hey, can you let us go plat a road right here? Because if you go about a half mile east, just on the other side of that one development, I think it's the Vandenberg development, I call it, fairly flat. We can take that almost to the gravel pit that's on Highway 10, and then from there, it's a little more gradual road going down. Now, the only question there I'd have is the DOT. They don't want you, and Jerry would probably know this, he's from the town of Oak Grove, because they don't want you to have an intersection at the bottom of a hill where it's a dangerous intersection. So that would be the only problem with that, is coming down by that gravel pit. Because if I could get that on the computer here, you'd see what I'm talking. It's fairly flat until you get that gravel pit. There's a kind of a gravel road that goes down there. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm
just
sorry.
a comment on that. Just putting it out that far, I live up near the Great River Development, and I don't think that would save me time going to the high school.
I'd put money on it. Just so you know.
If it did, it would be about 30 seconds. I actually went and drove it this morning. It took me 8 minutes from the high school
Are you
to my
talking
house.
1200th Street?
I'm talking
Through
going
downtown.
through town.
Okay.
I went through town past the fire hall. Took me 8 minutes from the high school to my house up in Pine Ridge, which is very near.
Okay, so then I had another 300 homes out by you.
Yep.
Now you're fighting traffic.
I understand- I
it is,
understand
it's
that,
the-
and-
It's the long range ones I'm looking at.
Yep. So I guess I do have a question, another question, and maybe for Greg or Matt or somebody. What is the impact? Let's just hypothetically say we plan for this 2-lane local connector. What is the impact to Phase 3 of Great Rivers development? Is there do we have an overlay that shows what it would look like and how many lots this is going to impact if we plan for this local connector?
I would guess, oh, go ahead.
So we don't have an overlay. I think if you look at the two maps that Greg put together for us, you can kind of see between the two maps what houses are lost. So like for instance, this is the local connector that's just would allow for driveways to be placed on the actual road. So the main loss of houses here is where the actual road continues straight. So instead of doing a cul-de-sacs, you might be losing 2 houses in this scenario where they'd have to be on either side. They couldn't go in a circle and end there. Whereas if you go back to the 4-lane, I don't know if you can go back there, Greg, sorry. You see that road, that whole road there, basically no houses could be on whatsoever. So as you go north and south, you lose all those houses that would be on that, I think it was Sea-Wing Boulevard. I'm not sure of the roads that, if they have names yet, that the Mouse are proposing, but.
So it really would, so hypothetically, with the 2-lane connector, it really only would be a couple lots lost right at the end of that cul-de-sac as planned.
That would be my view. I don't know, Greg, if you or maybe the most would have a different viewpoint, but
I would think it'd be about 2 lots off the end of that cul-de-sac to
Okay.
capture the needed right-of-way.
Thanks.
Quick question, the 2-lane versus 4-lane, is there funding challenges? If we chose 2-lane, it would be all on the city to figure that out forever. And if we did 4-lane, we could do smaller potentially, but if we chose to do a bigger road, the state or county could participate because of the titling, right? Is that right? Like what we choose to call it?
so if we did a more of an actual high-speed bypass that didn't have driveways on it, their state statute dictates when Wisconsin DOT can get involved, and when they actually look at bypasses, it's when that road would hit about 4,000 daily traffic, so they do studies of that, and be looking at that in terms of before they would get involved in constructing any sort of a bypass or helping with funding and putting it on their, constructing it themselves. And that's, until they get to that point, they don't even really consider it a viable solution. So like when we were having discussions and putting this in our comprehensive plan back in 2003, they were part of those discussions. However, the daily traffic counts didn't trip it in terms of actually putting it on their radar and making it an actual state bypass. So if we ever got to that point and we had, the one thing they do require is about 130 feet of right-of-way, which is much higher than like the 60 to 70 foot of right-of-way where we would be planning for a local connector. So to kind of get to your point, if we did a local connector, we would most likely be on the hook for the bridge, the whole thing, although we could apply for grants again to try to help for that.
What's the likelihood of grants being available? I mean, we do grants all the time in city operations. They come around often and successful to achieve them, or they kind of rare.
They're probably a little more rare for new construction. We did get a TEA grant for ride and road for the city, and that was driven by, because of the numbers of jobs created in that industrial park. I think it was 400,000 or 500,000 or something around that amount, I can't remember. That is one of the, but that wouldn't be the case here. That would be, this isn't for for job development or job growth for an industry. So they are a little more available for reconstruction of a local road. Like the BIL funding that was recently rolled out was only replacement of existing infrastructure, so not construction of new. So there aren't as many grant programs for construction of new.
Looking at anyone in that development, John might be one of them, wouldn't want this going through the development, plain and simple. But I'm the true believer is we gotta look farther than 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Because as we all know, Dexter should really have to be a local north-south road, but the council back then, we don't think that'll be an issue, and they didn't put it in. Maybe then I wouldn't mind having a little farther out, but they didn't. And so I don't think we as planning commission should keep kicking the can down the road saying, again, the more I think of it, this probably isn't the best because of the bridge, the cost. But then I'm not going out to 1200th Street. That's too far out. John would say that. John definitely is going to go through downtown before he go out to 1200th Street. But again, if I could get the map up and we go a half mile out, the other side of the Vandenberg development, and that might not get done for 20 years, but we should plan it. And it's a north-south. Again, 35. It's, as you know, on the weekends it definitely gets busy. It's maybe not 4,000 during the week, but it'll get there. And there's still trucks taking it, because you'd say there's not. I watch it every day when I used to go walk, and I still see them every weekend coming down from 35. So that's kind of what this would be, is to take that traffic off of when you're coming out of the development. It's not semis coming through and everybody else are taking that bypass. And so I'd be willing, again, if we don't put it here,
What are these semis, where are they coming from?
that's it. They're all different types. I've seen ones recycling, and I've seen
Yeah, but I
Holtz,
mean,
and
are
I've
they
seen.
coming off Highway 10 from Minnesota, and they're gonna,
Well, I see them coming in and out. I
but
see
you know what I'm
them
saying,
both
it's
ways,
like,
yeah.
what good would that bypass do them if they're trying to get across?
Well, they
the
come
river?
across Highway 10 and they know it's easier to go up and around instead of coming through our Main Street, and you know how Main Street gets, especially on the weekend. It's not pretty. It just makes our Main Street safer. They would know that the business district, they could go a lot faster going here than coming down the hill at 25 miles an hour.
It would take all traffic off.
Well, anybody that doesn't want to stop Prescott, they'd say, guess what? I've heard it's easier to take the pass and go by Highway
Or even
10.
local residents
Yeah.
won't be going down there.
Yeah, you're not hitting a traffic
efficient
light.
to, yeah.
You're not hitting a traffic light. You come down Highway 10 and you just merge onto the bridge. That's the quickness, and people would catch on after a while. So again, I'd push it a little farther east. Of course, again, that just hits the Oak Town line, but I still say, we do a study then and say, this is gonna be impacted by it. The next one out, where this is gonna go, they're already, Eichmann one, when that eventually happens, and it isn't gonna happen maybe in 10, 15 years, but it's gonna happen. And so what you're gonna do is go both sides of that, so we're gonna bring them in and go this way instead of all these people out here come down through Hollister, because again, you got another 300, 400, 500 homes 15, 20 years from now. Maybe it's gonna be longer, but that's gonna be a congestion if we don't think of putting something north-south sooner than later. Or at least have it platted. At least have it platted. We have that option. Maybe then again, maybe planning commission council 10 years from now, say, it's a stupid idea, but at least we gave the option there, because that Dexter should have had that same option, and we don't have it, my opinion.
Who owns the land a half a mile that way?
Let's see, it's the Pahachik's own chunk, and then you go to Stan Bowles, and if you're gonna go down through the gravel pit, it'd probably be the Rileys. But again, you talk ahead and maybe talk to them and just say ghost plat it. Of course, again, they probably, again, like the Eichmanns, they probably won't do it till they die, and maybe their grandkids say, oh, we don't have a tie to it, maybe they'll eventually, the money talks, we all know that. But at least talk to them, get it set, and then, again, start doing where, hey, every development that affects traffic, maybe they pay a little capital cost. Was it $1,000, $2,000? Say, well, that's a lot of money. I know it happens in one municipality for sure, and I bet you we could find other municipalities that do the same thing, so.
If we moved it a half a mile, how are you gonna connect it to 35 from there?
Well, and that's the next step. Then I'd have to go south and say, can we get a halfway decent road down through there? Or you're gonna backtrack a little bit. Roads do a little of that, but that's the next step you'd have to look at. But again, that bridge, I'd admit,
So you're just saying, somehow we need to get rid of the bridge.
Right, and if we can make a road go down through and it's just a steep slope, it'd be great, but the
No.
DNR, we know that darn well that water comes through that ravine deeper than deep.
Yeah, the challenge is on the south side to the north side. I don't know if you looked at the profile I set up, if I
Right.
expand what I thought I would need,
It's like this, isn't it?
it's like 15% grade, which you can't have on a
Right,
bridge.
that's why I think that
Yeah.
bridge is just
It would be
too crazy
way
to go
too
through this
steep.
development.
Right.
So I think, again, do a study, maybe future lots, and it's all the lots maybe in the city, pay a certain amount, or at least ones that we feel are collectors and that would go to that. And they maybe pay a percentage. Not all of it, because the city should pay some of it, the city of street too, but that's my
It would
recommendation.
be a lot more than $2,000.
Well, it depends. I'm trying to think of the one because I collect the fees as a building inspector, and I think that one might have been $4,000 a lot. It's a lot of money. I kind of thought it was all right, but I don't know the study.
But look what lots cost. I mean, it's not really a high percentage. You could look at it a percentage basis.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep affordable housing. It's a lot, but you're right. $4,000 compared to, is it 60 or 80,000, or is it 64 to 84? I know what you mean. But I guess that's my recommendation. Maybe the city should look into that, and this lot sale, they help pay for north-south, because I don't think you kick the can down the road. That's my opinion.
The location you depicted, I'm looking at it on a
Yep.
map, and there's
bad you can't
some
bring it
pretty well-established properties that get in the way of that.
Just on the east side of them.
The south side of Hollister, if you're gonna go, continue south.
Oh, continue
on-
south.
On a type of bypass, or even.
That's maybe where there's a little
Arterial.
jog. We'd have to have a little
Yeah.
jog,
Yeah, it would have.
That's I'm trying to solve a problem of that bridge, but then it complicates, going south from Hollister down to 35. Yeah, that makes it a little more difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I don't know, because we both know when you get to Hollister, then there's hills there to come off of, to get down on that.
Yeah, I knew it.
Unless you backtrack a little bit and then come, kind of where we talked, would be through the, what was it, Christensen property.
That would maybe work. Yeah, if you continue south from Hollister, you'll end up in some pretty big hills too.
I know what you're talking.
Okay, so this discussion we're having about this north-south bypass going through there, this is basically holding up the most development. So if we're gonna move it south, then you gotta understand that you can't come back. If we're gonna move forward and look at another place, we can't continue to say, well, you
You
guys
can't
gotta-
build your houses because
Yeah,
we
you
don't
can't build
know.
your houses, we might come back. So.
Well, right now, you can
I
say,
mean,
we want to keep
you
it
know,
there until they can help us get an alternative. It's not, we're not here to make life simple, we're here to make sure they follow the rules, and we follow our master plan. And right now, our master plan says that. That's why you do a
I get
master
that.
plan.
I get
It's
that.
not to make sure everyone it gets the easiest piece of pie they can. It's still follow the rules. Jump the hoops, make the city flow. And I don't want to delay them neither, but we also have to think, we still need something. And right now, this is on our master plan. If we're gonna change it, if we aren't gonna make them do it, we should change our master plan, number one, and we should have another alternative, not just, we didn't want to slow them up too much. We still gotta help the city.
Isn't there another option to kick the can, and if truly it's just two lots they're in contention here, if we're talking about the local connector, and I think it sounds like maybe most of us agree that a 4-lane bypass maybe is not necessary. I think a lot of us agree on that.
John looked at me and shook his head, isn't that terrible? Go ahead, John.
But I think there's another option to kick the can down the road here, and you leave those two lots undeveloped. And if we find another spot is found, then those lots are freed up to be built on, and everybody wins.
But we should probably start looking now for an alternative because
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think we all agree that we can't afford a bridge.
$10 million, even for a local one, is a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
You know what I'm talking?
I mean, I remember, the council struggles when they're like, oh, this is gonna be a $1.1 million bonding year.
Right.
That's a crap load of money. I can't imagine them saying, oh, it's gonna be an $11 million
Well, if we all
bonding
agree that
year.
the city cannot afford that and will not be able to afford that,
Correct.
then I think our
Never
job
seen
here
that.
tonight is we have our answer.
We also have many years to plan ahead because it's not going to be done tomorrow.
Agreed.
But then you should change your master plan.
Yeah.
I'm been in this long enough now.
'Cause they'll
If it's
never-
in the master plan, you should change it before you allow something to happen, and you should have a future plan. Otherwise, why have a master plan if you'd never follow it? That's my only thought.
So if you move a half an hour mile down the road east, you're now fully in Oak Grove
Oak Grove,
Township.
that would be it, and we could say
Okay,
on
so
our
then-
master plan, that's what
Then we
we
gotta take that up with, because that's not annexed.
only if we
to
ask
the
them to
city.
ghost plat.
Uh-huh.
If we asked them to ghost plat it, like we did, Bill Most, he let us plat it from 29 to 10. He said, yeah, he didn't have a problem if we put it on ghost plat. All that ghost plat means is we'd like something somewhere close to that, just like this really. We'd like something close to that. But they could move it a little bit either way. Bill Most could on his property. Now here we're going a whole nother bunch of property. You know, they're again, the Oak Grove was against us ghost platting the chunk through Oak Grove, so we didn't, in my opinion, just ghost plat it or as much as we can on our, well, we did it on our master plan, but do it to the next one. So we got a plan. It's not just, oh, well, throw that out. Let's just, whatever you guys want, go ahead and do it, make as much money as you can, and the city should be happy you're here. I don't totally agree with that. What can you give to the city to make sure you help the city not go into debt or it costs you and me as present taxpayers money because they want to develop and make money? And that's their job. Their job is to make money. We all know that. So, my thought. So I still think you should change your master plan, talk about assessing maybe a lot if we think that's it, because you and I as taxpayers, I don't want to pay 10 million for a bridge. I'll pay, 4 or 5, but maybe the developer should start paying for that bridge that would help everybody get through Prescott better, around Prescott better.
Or we find an alternate, we don't need the bridge.
Well, and that's what I think this one would be.
Yeah,
That one
smaller
east.
bridge, if you might need a bridge, but it'd be smaller. I guess I don't know the exact.
Yeah, where I'm thinking, I've been there enough, it's flat, and then you go down along that gravel pit, and it's probably a decent enough slope, maybe when you get to the bottom, I know that's where the dry run runs through.
Yeah,
If
small
you have to
bridge.
cross it, then it would be a small one.
$1 million
You know what I'm
bridge.
talking about.
$1 million bridge, a lot more.
So I don't wanna hold them up neither, but there again, then we should get a quick plan saying this is it, but I also like to say, let's get it into place that we're gonna maybe assess so much to help with a future road. Since they're not building it, or they're not having to dedicate it, maybe they help get paid for that next dedication that their development will probably use somewhat. And that's where you do a study and say, they're gonna use, 10% of it will be their people and 20 here and 10 there and
Whatever.
residential 10%, just a study. And maybe that's part of the approval of their concept plan, if you let them have it and say we're gonna move it, is they understand that they will be assessed once the study's done. I don't know if we can do that, that's where Matt would have to check into it.
What do you think the timeline would be to look into this alternate?
Cedar Court
route?
would have to be the one to tell you, I couldn't tell you. And you don't probably do that, do you?
I work with our planning group, I work with planners in our planning
Yep.
group, and I think it could be something we could look at very quickly to look at that option. I work with Matt and city staff to do something to revise that if that's what the city wants to do. We could certainly do that.
Okay. So one other question, this is a preliminary plat,
This is just a concept plan. right now.
concept? Because then we could approve them so they want to continue forward with the understanding we want to do the study before we give them a final one. Maybe the study says we don't charge them any, I don't know, that's up to the council actually, but I still think you gotta look at it. But if you say, yes, we like it, you may be assessed on that so much a lot for a future road down the line. That's getting them moving forward, and then I guess part of it is we'd have to say, let's move, if we wanna move it, recommend the council move it down to that, just outside the city limits, and at least put it on our plan that that's where we'd like to see it go to.
Like the mayor said, once we say, go ahead and build those homes, you can't take it back. So,
Once you give them a final plat. Yep.
He's saying make it contingent,
okay.
kind of.
Well, and right now, they're just a concept, so concept, go ahead and do it, that means, okay, draw it up and bring us a final plat. And then that's when, once we give them a yes in the final plat of the council, then they can start doing it.
Sure.
I've got another question, maybe. So, as you go out of Prescott on 35, past the Johnson, it's the bottleneck, and you go up into the new most development where there's many homes and many more to come, and then the field to the south gets developed someday with many more homes, and those are almost completely an island. In regards to connection to the city, you can't take your golf cart anywhere, that's a big deal. Walking to town, I don't know what that's like, can you walking on 35 sounds like a terrible idea. I won't let my
There's
kids ride
currently
their
no good way
bikes.
to walk to town.
Yeah, you're
Bike-
not gonna
bike
send
for
your
that
kids
matter.
on the bikes down on the 35 and that narrow bridge and like, I mean, for that reason alone, the north-south infrastructure is required in my opinion, my thought, but how we do it, you know, is obviously.
Maybe we'd have them dedicate trails. That's part of it. We have sidewalks, and technically our ordinance says the sidewalks probably on each side of the street. I myself am not a fan of that, because it's just more hard surface, more maintained. Can your kid walk across the street to the other sidewalk? Mine could, I think. At least mine could have back when they were younger. So I think we still put sidewalks in there and at some point hit a trail, and maybe a trail goes down through the woods and connects up with, you know, what's the group called? Cooley River Trail? You know, maybe we try to work up with that, so at least we've got trails for the kids to walk. Golf carts, okay, fine, maybe in the future, but at least trails for kids to take from north to south without going on Highway 35. And so that should be part of the concept too. Now, is there's a sidewalk in their last phase, maybe they gotta continue it, get it to where it goes down into, and connects up with the future Cooley River Trail to get kids safely from north to south.
And there has been some studies that have been done this spring. We've been looking at a pedestrian type of trail crossing, which is much less.
Right,
costly.
reasonably priced. So that should be part of their plan too, is, you know, let's start, you know, I know the city like the Cooley River Trails, and I think we kind of accepted their concept plan, maybe we make sure that this ties into that. And not sidewalks in every street, but maybe every third one, and north or south, or, that's my thought also.
Anybody else got anything?
So,
Questions?
do you need approval on the concept plan?
Yes, we do. We got to, well, to move it forward to the council.
So there'd be conditions of use. I'd recommend approval as presented with the understanding that we should do a study and possibly at final plat, let them understand they may be charged for a future road that their development may affect. Okay? They should have some trail system tying in. I think we got a master sidewalk plan as well as the Cooley Rivers. Maybe they have to tie somehow to that. Is it one or two sidewalks? You can shake your head, Hal, but that's, we could get the ordinance out and follow it to a T. And then, the council should also, you know, update their master plan. I guess that doesn't have to be a part of my motion.
So we have a motion.
I think, you know, before we lock in, we gotta see if we can use the alternate route. You'll find a different way without a bridge before we write this one off. So that would have to be included in the motion as a stipulation.
It's still a concept plan, right? That could be, approve the concept, move forward. We'd like to find an alternative route. Sidewalks or trails should connect to get kids from north to south or to the school or to the Cooley River Trail. And then I recommend that the council does an update on their master plan of where that trail, that north-south would go.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Mayor,
Have them read it.
can I just get clarification of what we're asking for on the alternative for a bypass? Just so I guess what
I was just thinking, do we look at moving it to the east? Just on the other side, it'd be just outside the city limits.
It's basically the east side of that gravel pit.
Yeah, the east side
Going
of,
straight.
actually, Daryl Vandenberg edition it costs, you know where the Vandenberg edition is, those.
Yep.
we have- Just east of that, if we could get down along that property line,
Well, if you go straight north, it goes right past the east edge.
right past gravel pit.
Yep.
Yep, so you kinda see where I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
it's a straight north-south shot from there.
And it's outside, so we really can't, but I still say in our master, maybe we try to include it, saying we decided to move it where it's probably not gonna cost the city $10 to $15 million for a bridge. Or not the city, but developer and the city, you know, we try to work together, you know.
Total cost regardless.
Total cost, yeah, however you look at it.
Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So I just want to make a comment. I know there was talk about 1200 Street being an alternative. If you have never gone out to 1200 Street up Hollister and gone to the right in the wintertime and gone down that hill, that is not a viable alternative. It is not a good road. So, yeah, this would be a much better concept to look for an alternative. So,
Could it be graded differently or no?
It's kind of like
no,
this.
it's,
Oh, I'm asking.
Yeah, it goes,
it's-
just so you know, it goes like this down.
it's a big
It's
S,
To do a little switch back, just look down it now.
Okay.
so.
It'd probably cost 5-10 million to do
All
that,
right.
you know? Yeah, it is a steep bank, Jerry knows that.
Is there any other business? Right, the next meeting is Tuesday, September 6th at 6 o'clock due to Labor Day.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I got a candidate for the chair.
Yeah,
South doesn't look
she
good
talked to me.
in that
Did she
spot.
talk to you after?
That's why I think we gotta have a judge.
She
There's no way
she
of-
sent me a
See, here's
text.
the thing.